Good morning. Welcome, everyone. We'll be getting started shortly here. Just going to give y'all a minute or two to filter in.
Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for Getting Started with Libby. My name is Lisa Mullins and I'm here joining as a training specialist. And we've got our Libby expert today, my teammate, Joe. We'll be taking you through today's session by starting with the basics, and then we'll test your knowledge a little bit. And then we're going to head into a deep dive of our favorite tips and tricks. But before we head into those basics, we're going to take a look at just a couple of housekeeping items for today. Okay. Now, you may have noticed the closed captioning. You can enable closed captioning for this webinar by tapping on that CC button in your Zoom meeting controls. Now, depending on the size of your screen, you might find that button under the More control. And then always, if your closed captions are getting in the way on your screen, you can actually move those around with your mouse. Okay. Now, also in those meeting controls, you'll find the Q&A button, and you can ask Joe and I questions throughout the entire webinar today using that Q&A button. And then how that will work is if one of us is talking or presenting, then the other person's going to be responding in the Q&A. So just go ahead and keep those questions coming. And this is going to be the only way to reach us because we do have the chat and raise hand features disabled. And that's because we just really like to make sure that the questions are asked and that we can provide you the answers. So we filter it all into one place for you. Okay. Now we are recording our webinar today, which means you're going to be receiving a link to the recording in an email from Zoom tomorrow morning. It's going to come around the same time. And since we are recording, that means that you're going to be able to review anything that you'd like to see again. You can pause it, play it back, all of those good things. Okay? And with that recording in mind, we know that everyone works at a different pace. And so what we recommend is that you just sit back and watch as we go through the demo today, and then go ahead and just wait to try Libby until after we wrap up. So in just a little bit. Okay. And when you do leave the webinar today, a survey is going to pop up on your internet browser. If you could take just a moment to provide us some feedback, let us know what you liked, what you thought we could improve, we would greatly appreciate it. And Joe and I are both going to be connecting some different devices to the webinar today. Now, sometimes, not always, but sometimes when we do this, Zoom cuts off part of the screen for some reason. But don't worry, this is an easy fix. Joe's going to be chatting out instructions on how to change this if this does happen. Okay, so now at this time, I'm going to share my screen. And today I'm going to be using an iPhone. I'm going to walk you through the process of downloading the Libby app and then signing in. Okay. Now I do want to mention that I'm on an iPhone, Joe's on an iPad, but Libby's available on mobile iOS devices, on Android devices, and you can always use Libby in a web browser at libbyapp.com. Now, the only difference that you're going to see between these devices is where you go to download the app. So all of the functionality of the app itself is going to remain the same. Okay. So with that, I'm going to go ahead, share. My iPhone. Sorry, the directions popped up on a separate monitor. There we go. Get Zoom. Taking a second. There we go. Okay. All right, it's on a second monitor, so I do apologize. You see me looking away. That's why I'm looking at my phone screen. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to be going to that app store. I'm going to open that up on my iPhone, and I'm going to go to search down here in the lower right-hand corner. Now, in that search bar, I'm going to start typing in Libby. L-I-B-B-Y. There I see here, Libby by OverDrive. That's exactly what I want. I'm going to tap on there. And here you can see, let's just scroll that down, hide that a little bit. You see Libby by OverDrive. Now, because I do have Libby on my phone already, you'll notice that it does say open next to it. And that's because, again, I do already have Libby. If you were downloading it for the very, very first time, it would actually say the word get, G-E-T. And then you could go through, you might have to be prompted to enter your Apple ID and so on. Okay, but because I do have it, simple as that, I'm gonna go ahead and let's open Libby. Okay. Now, Libby's great because you see she first asks you some questions and kind of just takes you through that process. So we have a nice welcome here. And my first question today is, do you have a library card? And I'm going to say that, yes, Libby, I certainly do have a library card. And now she's going to ask me some other questions, some different ways that I can find my library. And today I am actually going to go ahead and search for my library. Let's do this. There we go. And right in there, And Joe, if you could just give me a thumbs up today, CW Mars, is that where we're at?
Yeah, actually, if you want, I just sent their zip code through in the chat.
Oh, did you? Thank you so much, Joe. Appreciate it. I'm gonna do that. That's so much easier. And it is 01007. Search. Oh, there it pops up right for me. So we can see here. This is where we're at today. I'm gonna just go ahead and tap right on that. And now I'm in the library. And at this point, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to hand it off to Joe.
Awesome, thanks so much, Lisa. And so you can see on Lisa's screen when you're ready to enter, you just need to sign in with your library card using that Enter Library Account Details button.
And I'm gonna go ahead and show that.
Yeah, if you don't mind, that'd be great.
Absolutely, I knew there was something. Let's enter those details. And here we go, card number. Sorry, it's like a high pressure situation.
It's always tough when you have to put in those numbers. This is probably the only part that's easy to make a mistake with, and that's just switching a number around. So good advice for everyone, even the experts. We have parts that we sweat too.
Definitely. Yay, success.
That's great. Thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome.
Exactly. So all you have to do is type in your library card number and your PIN. If you have any trouble doing that, reach out to your friendly neighborhood librarians. I know Tegan is in the meeting today and they can help you along with any of the other wonderful people at your local branch. So I'm going to take a second here and get my iPad connected. Thank you once again, everyone, for joining us. Now, you saw what your library is going to look like on Lisa's screen. I'm using a demo library for our webinar today, just because I like to make sure I'm not borrowing anything y'all might be waiting for. So just keep in mind, you'll see a different logo at the top of my screen, but all the functionality is exactly the same. So we are in, and we are gonna, dive in and go for it. All right, so let's look at the Libby app. This is where I just want to reemphasize, if you can't see the full screen, if Zoom has cut off any of my display, you should be able to see 5 icons at the bottom, and I'm going to have Lisa send those instructions through the chat right now. If you don't see those in the chat, just pop in a question in Q&A and we'll get those to you there as well. So we're going to talk about all of these 5 icons throughout the webinar this morning. I won't miss any of them, don't worry, we'll be covering all of them, but we're going to just take some time with each of them. We're going to use this center one, which is Libby herself, as our guiding point, and we're going to start to the left of the Libby icon and work our way through. So our kind of first icon here when you get started and after you sign in, this is where you'll be left, is on our library card tab. So we can see that little square at the bottom, that's our library card. And I like to say, when you want to go to the physical library, you grab your library card to go, you're going to do the same thing here. So the library card is your browsing experience. It's like when you want to walk around the physical library, look at the different collections that your librarians have put together for you. You're just kind of browsing. You don't know exactly what you want. You're looking for that next great read. You do the same thing on this page. So up at the top, we have some filters I like to point out. These make it easier to jump into different collections. So just added and popular, pretty self-explanatory. A well-loved button is available now. So these are books you don't have to wait for. And then I start most of my searches, honestly, in this one, subjects. And I said, Tegan, I saw your question pop up. I will be covering that actually at the end of this one. So perfect timing. I'll mark that one as live and we will get to it toward the end. So I tend to start mine with subjects, and we'll actually get into these in our deep dive session a little bit more, but that's one way you can start your search. Then if we scroll a little bit, you'll see this kind of next section here, and these are all guides. So mine will look a little differently than yours. This is a demo library, so only a few people have access to it. We're usually showing off features you can add or you can use. But typically libraries are going to break things down like, if you hop in here, here's some great lists for kids or teens. You'll also see, mine is called a new magazine room, but yours is just called magazines. So you can dive in and see your library's lists of magazine titles. And then when we go a little bit further down, this is when we're kind of in the meat of the library card tab. So all of these different librarian lists are curated lists by your library staff to give you great recommendations. So think of this like you see that end cap with titles that say beach reads that are wonderful things you want to take with you to the beach. This is that same vibe. So you can kind of scroll through and say, oh, this looks interesting to me. I'm going to tap and dive into this list. Now, if you know exactly what you're looking for, you can come back down to the navigation bar and go with that magnifying glass and search for a title. So library card is that browsing, and the magnifying glass is that specific option. Let me just move some Zoom controls out of my way. There we go. I couldn't see my full screen. I needed to be able to. So I'm going to, let's see, search for a title. How about, looking at my list here, how about a thriller today? We're going to look for One by One. And I'll type that in. And you can see there's actually some suggestions popping up. I could just go with the title. I actually like to hit search or enter in my keyboard, and this is going to give me everything that matches that description. It's going to put the most likely match up at the top, which it did. I am looking for this Ruth Ware title, one by one. But so that's a way you can search for something specific. Now from this screen, there's two great things I want to talk about right away. Your library will purchase titles in both ebook and audiobook formats. So you can either read or listen, and you have to decide which version you want kind of before you check it out. So the first thing we want to point out is the time it's okay to judge a book by its cover. And that's if you want to know if it's an ebook or an audiobook. So we've got our full rectangle here, your typical jacket look. That is your ebook. But then right over here, we have the audiobook. So it is a shorter jacket. It's a square actually. And I always think they kind of look like CD cases. And since you listen to a CD, kind of think of it that way. At the bottom or right underneath that cover, we have little earbud icons. Once again, you're listening, and then you'll be able to see the runtime. So this one will be about a 13-hour listen on the default speed. So you can kind of look right away and say, oh, I know I want the audiobook version. I could borrow that just by looking to make sure I'm checking out what I want. The next thing we can see here is the difference between borrowing a title and placing a hold. So sometimes you'll have to join a wait list for a title you want to read, just like in the physical library. If all of the copies are checked out, you'll have to wait until one becomes available again. So with the audiobook copy of One by One, we can see right here, it says place hold. And our little library card above it has a clock next to it. Might be a little hard to see on the screen right now while I'm sharing, but we can see that. So we've got place hold, while on this side we have borrow, and our library card has that plus sign. So for place hold, I know I want this title. I'm actually just going to tap on that. And it's going to take us to this confirmation screen. We'll see about how long we have to wait. There's one copy in use. I'll only be waiting about 2 weeks. And to confirm, I'm just going to tap that place hold button. Libby's letting me know I've placed a hold on it. And I have a few options here. I could play a sample. It's usually the first chapter. And then we have some options if I wanted to suspend it or go to my shelf. But I want us to borrow something right now, so I'm going to tap on Keep Browsing, and this will take us back to the search we were just in. We can see the audiobook of One by One is on my hold shelf, and let's come over and borrow the ebook version. I have a few features I want to show off in an ebook. Now I could do the same thing and tap on Borrow, but if you don't know what the book's about and you want to find out more about it, just tap on that jacket cover, and you're going to get that kind of back of the book experience. You can scroll through, see the description, even down at the bottom, it's saying also available as an audiobook. And we can see right up here that borrow button is available. So I'm good with that. I'll tap on borrow, and this is taking us to that confirmation screen. You'll see this with a couple different actions you take, looks very similar, but before we hit borrow, I want to point out up at the top, you are borrowing One by One for 14 days. Now, 14 days is the default lending period at your library, but if you want a shorter or longer option, just tap on 14 days, and you can either pick 7 or 21. So looks like it might be a long book. I'll go with 21 days. And now, when I tap borrow, 21 days is going to become my default for ebooks going forward. So I only have to make that change one time, and then I'll be sticking around with 21 days every other ebook I borrow. Okay, so we can see this circle right here. Libby is trying to download this for me so I can read it offline. Now that we've got that check mark, if I turned off my Wi-Fi, got up in a plane, walked into the middle of the woods, sat down on the beach, I could still read this book without needing to be connected to the internet, either on Wi-Fi or cellular data. She's got it downloaded for me so I can open it right back up. So just keep in mind for that. And let's open up this book and dive on in. Okay, so the first time you borrow a Kindle compatible title, Libby's going to bring up this option for you. So I know Lisa mentioned Libby is available on Apple and Android if you want to download the app, or in a browser at libbyapp.com. Libby isn't currently available for our Kindle Fire tablet friends, but you can use Libby on another device to send ebooks to a Kindle. We're always working to get Libby in there, but she's not available right now. So if you have a Kindle you prefer to read on, if you've got like a Paperwhite, or if you just like reading on your Fire, you could tap this, simple process, she'll walk you through it. But I that don't have a Kindle, I tend to just read in Libby, so I'm going to pick this option here. Now we'll take a second and let the book open. There we go. So when you open a book for the first time, you'll see the cover in its full color glory. And we have menus at the top and bottom of the screen. They're in our way right now, so to make those menus disappear, we'll tap in the center of the screen. Or if you want to make them reappear, once again, tap in the center of the screen. We'll talk about the top one in a minute, but down at the bottom, we can see some great progress info. So I can see I'm on page 1 of 387. And there's a great slider if you want to skip around, or you can access the table of contents here. But I'll make those disappear, and then I'm going to advance forward by either tapping or swiping on the right side of the screen. And I'm just gonna flip through a little quickly here until we get to a nice chunk of text. Oh man, look for, there we go. Whew. Get us into some normal big page of text. I might have to pull this one off of our search for this list. That took a while. So we're reading. You might look at your screen and go, this is way too small. I need this bigger for my eyes. Just tap in the center of the screen to bring those menus back up. And let's look at some ways that we can customize our ebooks. I'm going to tap on this A icon, and that will pull up my appearance menu. So there are 3 ways I can customize an ebook. I can change my text scale. That's the first one. So I always say you can make this larger or smaller. Every ebook can be a large print book. You're not limited to the physical book collection. You can change your lighting. So default is bright in Libby. It's great for reading outside, but you also have sepia and dark. I like dark mode for reading at night, easy on your eyes, keeps your screen brightness down. And then the last thing you can change is the book design. So the publisher's default is what it would look like if you picked this book up off the shelf. But we have 5 total pre-made fonts, including our open dyslexic font, which might help some users with dyslexia while reading. Now I'm going to flip back to all of my normal settings here, because this menu is a sticky menu. Basically what that means is any change you make in here will stay and apply to all books you have borrowed or borrow in the future. And you only have to change that, or you only ever have to make changes in here if you want something to be different. So if you decide, maybe this is a little too small, I need it a little bit bigger, or vice versa, just pop in. Otherwise, Libby's going to deliver books the way you like them going forward. All right, that takes us through appearance settings. We're going to leave this ebook by opening that menu again, and we'll tap back in the upper left-hand corner. So we're now on our shelf, and I want to take a second here to reorient everyone. So the shelf is where our current loans and holds live, but we'll talk about that more in a minute. Let's reorient down at the bottom. First thing I want to point out is right now my navigation bar looks a little different because I have the now bar that popped up. So this will open every time you open a new book. I didn't have a book on loan before or opened up and reading, so this bar has appeared with 1 by 1. If you tap on it, it'll take you right back to the place you left off at. I'm going to dismiss this though, so we can get that out of our way. So here's our center mark Libby. We started to the left of Libby, looking at the library card where we browse for titles, and then the magnifying glass where we search for our specifically wanted titles. We're now going to hop to the right. Right now we are on our shelf. Like I mentioned, our current loans and holds live here. And that is that stack of books icon. So when we tap in here, we can see everything we're currently borrowing, all sorted out for us. And we can even tap on loans or holds if we want to see those items specifically. If you have a hold available, it will pop up right up top and Libby will say, hey, this is ready to borrow. Do you want it? So since we are on our shelf, I want to take a second and hop into an audiobook. We just looked at ebooks. Let's open up this audiobook here, Furiously Happy. Just downloaded this today, so I have 0 progress in it. This looks a little similar to an ebook. We have our jacket cover in the center. And up at the top is our progress bar. Since I borrowed this today, I'm 0% through it. And we can see our full duration across. At the bottom, we've got our chapter info once again. And the most important button of all for the audiobook is this one right in the center. This is the play button. So when I tap play, that's going to turn into our pause button. And I'm going to have to pause in a second because you can probably hear the intro music over my microphone. So I'm going to tap pause and that will stop the playback. Basically, we wanted you to have a nice clean experience in Libby, so it's not all cluttered up with buttons. You tap play when you're ready to listen, and when you're done listening, you tap that pause button. Libby is designed to play audiobooks in the background. So if you tap play and maybe you lock your device, or you open another app, say you're scrolling through one of your social medias and kind of looking around, you can still listen. I am always guilty of locking my phone, putting it in my pocket, and going and doing chores with an audiobook playing. So just remember to hit pause when you're done. Otherwise, Libby's going to keep going. We're going to leave by tapping back. And now one last reorient here. We've got a new now reading bar because we opened a new title. Just going to close that one. And we have 2 menus left to talk about. So we're going from our current loans and holds to our history of everything we've done in Libby. This clock icon is your timeline. So think of the timeline like the past. This is everything you've borrowed, placed on hold, renewed, returned. So anything current's that shelf, anything past is that timeline. We're going to wrap up with the Libby menu. This is what we've been using to orient ourselves all morning. I'm actually going to close that for a second. I just want to point out she's had this little bubble next to her head with the number 1 in it. That is a notification, and it's the first thing we're going to talk about. But I just wanted to point that out here. Tap on Libby. And right up at the top, here is the description of what that one was about. So my library has added another title of the New Yorker. I can, check out this magazine and borrow it right away. But to dismiss this notification, I am just going to swipe it to the right. And hopefully my video catches back up. There we go. And now I can see this box that says Manage Notifications. So that's what an in-app notification looks like. And we're going to hop into this menu in just a second and talk about notifications. I want to point out that the very first time you place a hold, Libby's going to bring this menu to you, but I want you to know what each of those things mean, how you can find it if you want to change something later, and why they're important. So we're just going to take a few seconds to talk about this. So in Manage Notification, you have 3 ways you can be notified, and then we have a few things that you can be notified about. So first, this gold option, the menu badge, that's the one you just saw. This is great if you want to open Libby every day, or if it's for something that you know isn't something that's super time sensitive. That little icon is going to show up in the app on the menu with that card in the Libby menu. Or you can use this blue option, notification, and that's going to be a push notification. It's going to appear on your device's home screen or lock screen or in your notification center, a lot like a text message does. So this is great for super important notifications, or if it's something you never want to miss, or you just want to make sure that it's right at the top of your mind. There's also an ignore option available. I tend to ignore when my loans expire. And then the one thing I want to take a second to talk about is hold ready. My opinion, this is the most important notification to make sure you have set in a way that you'll see it. And this is one that I make sure I set to that teal option notification. So hold ready. This is when those books that you've placed on hold are becoming available. Libby's going to alert you and say, hey, this book is ready to borrow. When a hold becomes available, you have a few options and you have a 3-day window to make a choice. So you can either borrow that title, have Libby deliver it later, so she'll keep you at the top of the list, but she'll let people start borrowing it before you. So if you say, I'm not going to be ready for that for about a month, we'll say 3 weeks, Libby will keep you at the top, but people underneath you will borrow it, and then you'll be, the next one on the list once that 3-week window is up. The last option is to cancel a hold. So borrow, deliver later, or cancel that hold. If you don't make one of those choices in that 3-day window, Libby is going to deliver it later one time as a courtesy to you. And she'll give you about a week and say, okay, you missed it the first time. Do you want to borrow it, deliver it later, or cancel? If you don't make a choice that second time in that 3-day window, she's going to just cancel your hold and you'll be removed from the waiting list. And nothing is more of a bummer than missing out on a book that you've been waiting a while for. So that's kind of why I harp on this one. Just make sure you've got your hold ready notifications on. All right, enough of my soapbox. I'm going to tap back and take us back into the Libby menu. 2 other sections I want to talk about. The first one, or the second one here, is your libraries. So you can see I have a couple cards stored here. Libby is designed to store multiple library cards, whether it is multiple cards from the same library. So maybe you're a family sharing a device and you all want to have your own cards in here, or, which is the really cool thing that y'all have access to, you can store multiple cards from different libraries. So at CW Mars and in the state of Massachusetts, you actually have access to a total of 8 libraries with the 1 card you have. And that's what Tegan was mentioning earlier. So I am going to mark that as done because I'm going to dive into it. So if you want to add cards from other libraries, we're going to first tap on Add a Library. And remember, we're recording, so you'll be able to review this. You can pause me and slow me down as much as you need for when you're adding this in your Libby app later. Now, I know earlier, Lisa had you use your zip code, and that's great for your first library. But when you want to add these other ones, we're just going to type in Massachusetts. Let's see if this Ohioan can spell it. There we go. All right. So now by typing in Massachusetts, I can see all the libraries I have access to with my CW Mars card. So remember, your card is from this library, and you can borrow from Noble, Sales, Old Colony, Clams, Boston Public, Merrimack, and Minutemen. The other 2 that pop up are universities. You won't have access unless you have university cards for those. They just popped up because we used Massachusetts, but this is the easiest way to find all of them. I would recommend going from the top of the list and working your way down. We'll tap on Noble. It's going to look very similar to the first time you set up your library card, but instead of choosing Enter Library Account Details, we're going to go with I'm visiting from another library. Drop down will pop up, and we just need to pick CW Mars. This is where our home library card is from. And then similar to before, you'll type in your library card number and your PIN. From there, you'll have access to another library's collection of ebooks, audiobooks, and magazines. Now you will have to do that a total of, if you're doing all of it in one day, you'll enter your card info 8 times. If your library card is already in there, you'll do that a total of 7 additional times. But then Libby's going to save that info, and anything you borrow from any of those libraries is going to live on that one shelf. So you've already seen the shelf under that stack of book icon. It's all going to be the same shelf. Even if you're in all 8 libraries, all of your borrowed materials go to one place. All right. So the last section I want to talk about is help and support. Specifically, if we hop into Get Some Help, while Lisa and I are here for y'all today, and you can ask us all the questions you like throughout the morning, I wanted you to know that you're never alone. So we have a tech support team available 24 hours a day, 365 days of the year. They even work on holidays, so you'll be able to reach out to our dedicated team of Libby experts anytime. They do all of their communication via email, and at most it would take 24 hours for a reply, but so you'll be able to reach them here. But I want to show you some things you can do before you have to reach out to them. First, we have common solutions to frequently asked questions. There's even a button in here so you can sync Libby to another device. So if you're like me and you set up Libby on your phone, but you also have an iPad you want to use, or your computer at work, and you don't want to have to type in all 8 library cards again and again and again, we've made it super quick and easy. You'll just use the button when you're setting up that other device that says copy from my other device. Or if you have a question, want to know a little bit more about something else, I'm going to type in a keyword here. So I like to keep this session to the basics, everything you need to know to function within the Libby app. So I don't cover returning titles early because titles automatically return on their due date, so there's no fines or late fees. But if you finish a book early and you want to hand it back over to the library, let's see, we could learn how by typing in return. Libby's guessing for me. I'll go with returning books. And up top, she'll say books are automatically returned, so you don't have to worry about it. But if you do want to do it, here's the steps. Now, you saw this probably when we had typed in return, but also at the bottom of any article, if it wasn't the answer you were looking for, you can tap that button that says Ask Our Support Team, and this will allow you to put in all the info you've got, send it off to our tech support team, and they will help you as best as they can. They are experts. They know everything about the Libby app. They live and breathe it, and they're super friendly. All right. I know I just threw a ton of info at you, but hopefully you are as excited as I am. I'm going to hand things back off to Lisa, and she is going to hit us with some next steps.
Okay, thank you, Joe. That was fantastic. So now, as we're wrapping up our getting started demo portion of the webinar, I just want to remind you of a few things. One, you can ask us any questions that you might have about this app. Feel free to download the app, sign in, play around, ask questions as they come up. We're going to be answering questions throughout the entire webinar today. This is super fun. I'm looking forward to this. So before we head into our deep dive, we are going to reinforce some of what you just learned today by taking a mini quiz. And we're going to walk through 5 or so questions together to see what you learned over the last 30 minutes. And probably not 5 questions, because at about 11:15, we're going to be sharing our favorite Libby tips and tricks in our deep dive session. Now, we recommend that stay for this session if you're feeling like you're comfortable, you're ready to learn more, you're feeling okay about that. Go ahead and stick around to join us. But remember, it's okay if you're like, you know what, I've had enough today. I'm going to just stop right here. Go ahead and hop off, because remember, we are recording our session and we want you to be comfortable with Libby, and watch that deep dive recording when you're ready to take on more. Okay. And I will give you a last call before we move on to our deep dive, so you can hop off if you feel like you're done for today. Now, with that said, if you want to just take a few minutes, stretch, get a drink, get comfortable, you can keep sending in your questions. Joe and I are going to answer them as we move along. And maybe we have time for just 1 or 2 questions on our little quiz here today. Now, I do want you to know those questions are going to pop up on your screen. The answers are anonymous, so take your best guess at them if you're not sure. Okay. All right, let's look. Oopsies, I just moved us way ahead. Sorry about that. Okay. Let me get this up here. And our first question today is going to be about searching. And so, in the navigation bar, what do you tap to browse your library's collection? Is it the magnifying glass? That would help if I launched the polling. Sorry about that, folks. Is it the magnifying glass? Is it the library card? Is it the Libby menu? Is it the stack of books? Is it the clock? Or perhaps you're unsure because that's a lot of options. We'll take just a few seconds. I see those answers are coming in. Thank you for your participation. This is fantastic. Okay. All right, we're at 80% of the vote, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to end this in 3, 2, and 1. All right. There we go. And that, I don't know why it's so big on my screen. Sorry about that, folks. All right, great. So let's take a peek here. I've got a little video to show you. Now remember, in the navigation bar, to browse that collection, you're going to tap on the library card. Just give that library card a tap, and then you just, you can use your filters, you can use your guide, you can move through those curated lists that have been created by your library. But when you want to find something specific, because this was the other that we had a tie here, when you want to find something specific, you're going to tap on that magnifying glass then, excuse me, and you're going to add that, and you can go ahead and type in your title or your author or series name. Awesome. All right, Joe, do we have time for one more, you think? Okay, yay, this is super fun. Here we are for question 2. Let me pull this here. Now this one's going to be about the shelf. And so I'm going to ask, in the navigation bar, what do you tap on to find your current loans and holds? Is it the magnifying glass? Is it your library card? Is it the Libby menu? Is it the stack of books? Is it the clock? Or perhaps we're unsure. Perhaps you were distracted when Joe went over that and you missed it. So this is a great time to reinforce that learning. Votes are rolling in. We're at 55% of votes. And we got to 80% last time. Okay. Remember, answers are anonymous, so it's okay to just take a guess. All right, we're going to end this one in 3, 2, and 1. Thank you. All right, everyone chose stack of books. Nice job. Nice job. Tapping on that stack of books icon takes you to your shelf, and you can manage all of your loans and holds. That's wonderful. Okay, so I see we're at about time, so we'll go ahead. Okay. I'm just going to jump us forward a couple of slides here.
Yeah, while I love the quiz, I always want to make sure I can cover adding additional libraries through the reciprocal lending agreement. So usually, Massachusetts, you've got one of the best features that I know we're always jealous of, but definitely lose out on some of those questions because of it.
That's okay. We got the most important information. So, Okay, so great job with our little quiz, everyone. Now, I promised you I would give you that warning, and we're about to head now into our deep dive session. So here's that last call. So if you're at your max after our quiz, you've had enough for today and you want to hop off, absolutely feel free. Now's your time. Thank you so much for joining us. And remember, look out for that recording in your email tomorrow from Zoom because you'll still be able to view this Libby deep dive session. Okay? But for those of you who are sticking around, or perhaps you're just joining us, there we go. Once again, I'm Lisa, and I am joining here as a training specialist, helping out. And I'm here today with Joe, our digital bookmobile expert. And we are going to show you some tips and tricks using the library reading app, Libby. Okay, now looking here, it looks like about everyone's here from our getting started. So I'm just going to go real quick through this. Remember that you can enable closed captioning for this webinar by tapping on that CC button within the Zoom meeting controls. You can ask questions throughout our entire webinar using the Q&A feature within the Zoom meeting controls as well. Please feel free to ask us questions throughout our session. Some of the questions might be marked to answer live, which means we'll be showing those questions live on screen after we wrap up with our 4 tips and tricks. Okay. Remember that we are recording. You're going to receive an email from Zoom. A survey will pop up when you leave our webinar today. Please fill it out and provide us some feedback. Thank you in advance. And lastly, if Zoom cuts off the bottom of our devices, don't worry. You can easily change this setting and we'll chat out those instructions again for you. Whew. Okay, that's all out of the way. Let us move on. So we're going to be covering a few of our favorite tips and tricks from within the Libby app today, including talking about magazines. We're going to look at our favorite ways to navigate new magazine feature in Libby. Then we're going to be showing you today how we find the books that we like, as quickly as possible by filtering and refining our lists. And we're going to talk tags. We're going to find out why we love them and what we use them for and why you should love them too. Then we're going to wrap up today by showing you the wonderful tool of taking notes and highlights. Okay. So I'm going to let Joe go ahead and get his iPad connected, and we are going to dive right in.
Thank you, Lisa. Let's see. There we go. Zoom always loves when I try to share an iPad in. There we go. We should be all set. Let me just move some things around. So thank you, everyone. If you are sticking around or if you're just joining us, welcome, welcome. Or if you're listening to this recording in the future, hello, hope you're having a great day. All right, so I am all connected now. Thank you for your patience. I'm going to take you through 4 of our favorite tips and tricks within the Libby app. We're going to look at some new features that have just recently really expanded the experience. And after we get through these 4 tips and tricks, we'll then open up the floor and kind of do a live Q&A demo on screen. So if you have questions, still keep sending them through. Lisa's going to answer those as I go or mark some of them as read for me to show off at the end. We'll save about 10 or 15 minutes. And if there's something you want to see, just pop it in that Q&A and I'll cover it then. So we're going to get started with tip number 1, which is all about magazines. And the first thing I want to remind you is on that library card tab, underneath your logo, you have all of those guides, and you do have a specific magazine guide. So that is available to you right in there. You can hop in and see your library's organized list of magazines. Like in our collection here on the demo, we've got some by popular, and it will kind of breakdown there. These are all just generated, so your library is going to have done, some actual more fun and useful versions of that. You can also use the magnifying glass to search for specific titles you're interested in. So just like you can search for authors and titles of books, you can also search for titles of magazines. I'm not going to go through too much on that. I just wanted to take a quick overview of it because I already have a magazine downloaded on my shelf. Magazines are image heavy, and so when I'm doing a webinar, the internet doesn't love the combo of download a magazine with a lot of pictures while running Zoom and all that. So I like to just have one handy so we don't wait forever. All right, so I'm going to open up HGTV magazine here. And let's see, I've borrowed this before, so it's opening up right in the middle, but I'm going to take us back to the beginning. So it's going to look just like, we saw in an ebook if you joined us earlier. We have menus at the top and bottom of our screen. And there's kind of two main ways you can navigate through a magazine. Down at the bottom, this is what we joke as the perfect vision route. If you can see those tiny little icons, you can tap on the one you want, or you can kind of reference those page numbers. That's how I jumped right back to one. Or you can make those menus disappear by tapping in the center and tap or swipe from the right side of your screen. It's going to be the exact magazine experience preserved, just as if you were picking this up off of, someone's coffee table. You're seeing all of the ads, all of the articles. I like to just flip a few pages in before I get to this table of contents page. Because what I love about magazines in Libby is that all of these different table of contents pieces on the picture are actual functioning buttons. So if I want to know what still makes you go, I can just tap on that and Libby's going to jump through to that page I was interested in. Now, this is where I'm going to talk about the recent update that makes magazines so much more enjoyable in Libby than ever before. Previously, you would use, and you can still use it if you prefer, tap in the center of the screen and use this zoom button and kind of pinch in and out to see the things that are too small on your screen. But we've now got this great button down at the bottom. So it's this black circle that turns every article into kind of an article view. So it pulls in your appearance settings from an ebook, so you can have that larger font and that background color you like, and all of the images, and it puts them in a nice scrolling format. So I can see large on the screen, all of those article pieces without any, odd fonts or having to zoom in and out and move around a bunch, and just kind of scroll my way through the magazine article instead of that less convenient format. So the other thing I want to point out up at the top here, another great part that I love, actually, before I talk about that, how could I forget? If you haven't opened an ebook, or if you're just interested in magazines and you're diving into them first before any ebooks or anything like that, if you didn't set your appearance settings and you want to adjust them, you can actually do that in that A icon. So you can still make that font size larger or smaller for your screen and change the background color. Great if you like magazines a little different than ebooks, just know that it'll change your settings around a bit. The next great functional update still in this for magazines are these three buttons right here. Love them so much because I tend to try to skip the ads and just read the articles I'm interested in. We've got these hands pointing back and forward, and it's exactly what you think it is. It's going to jump to the next article. Every once in a while, ads stick in there, but for the most part, you're just able to skip over everything and go article by article and hop. Actually, as I'm like, yeah, who doesn't love navy and white? I do. Immediately ready to read this article. But so you can use that to kind of skip through the magazine itself, or tap this center button, and it's going to pull that table of contents. Big old fingers on a tiny screen here. It's going to pull up that table of contents. So if you want to say, hey, wow, what color is that? I can tap on it and it'll take me there, still in the article view. So I don't have to kind of navigate in the table of contents in the center and, deal with ads and all that. I can really just jump around and still have this great scrolling format. So I don't have too much time to spend on magazines because, other than that, it is just kind of back to reading. But those are some features that if you tried magazines before and didn't love it, or really want a way to get into them, this is a wonderful feature to do that. When you're ready to leave the magazine or just this display, you can either tap back or this tiny little down arrow, and it will close that Reading Now shade, and you're back in the typical magazine format. Tap in the center of the screen, just like we've been doing with our ebooks earlier, and you can tap on back to leave the magazine. So that took us back to our shelf and wrapped up tip number 1, all about magazines. For tip number 2, we're going to look at how we can find the books we want to read as quickly as possible by filtering and refining lists. So what I need to do for that is get to my library. So I'm going to tap on my library card. Remember, that's where we go to browse. We don't know exactly what we're looking for. And the first thing I want to do is talk about how you can set an app-wide preference so you can really customize your experience across the board. Maybe you're someone who only really wants to listen to audiobooks, or you want to make sure you're never really seeing titles in languages you don't read in. Maybe you only read in one language and you want to just see titles in that language you read. There's ways that you can customize Libby so they always stay present and you can see what you want whenever you want it. I'm on that library card and I'm scrolling past those guides. I know I said those guides are going to be different for everyone, but a button that we all share is preferences. So we can come in here and set preferences for a lot of different things. I'm just going to talk about some of the common ones here for a second. The first one, and the one I see most often when I visit people at libraries, is language. So like I mentioned, if you just want to see titles in the language you read in, you can come in here and say, okay, I only read titles or listen to titles in English. I want to set an app-wide preference so I only ever see those English titles. Other really popular ones, like I mentioned earlier, are format. So if you only listen to audiobooks, or you only want to read ebooks, or maybe you're just here for the magazines, you can set any one of those, and that will filter out all of the other types of content. The last one that's really popular is audience. So if you are a parent or a grandparent setting up a device for a kiddo, you can set the audience so that they are only seeing age-appropriate content. So maybe you're cutting out the young adult and general and mature content and setting it juvenile only, or you're just seeing that young adult content for your teens. Great way to be able to, feel a little bit better as you're handing a device over and saying, okay, go ahead and read. And I'm waiting for my screen to catch up. Froze a little bit there. There we go. You can play around with these. You'll find what works for you. I'm just going to set it to English for now and say apply preferences. And now any of, maybe now I'll no longer see Russian titles or French titles. Your library is going to offer titles in a lot of different languages. So just make sure you're seeing what you want to see. The page refreshed because we applied a preference. And now if I scroll back down, I can see next to preferences, there's that number 1 because I only set one preference. This is going to stick forever unless you delete the app or come in and change it. You can go right back in and say, okay, I want to see all languages again. Unless you change it, it's going to stick around for you and make a difference. Just want to point out, if you set several preferences in there and you're searching for a book, what's a title every library has? Great Gatsby, the classics, anything like that. Just about every library is going to have a copy. If you're searching for the Great Gatsby and you're not seeing a result, you might be limiting yourself with your preferences, so keep that in mind. All right, that's kind of like the tip within a tip. I try to sneak that in because it's a great way to really, customize your experience. That'll apply to every list. I want to show you how you can actually find books you like as fast as possible when you're looking for it. I like to do this with a little prompt. So let's say tomorrow, my mom and I are going to go on a road trip. She's always wanted to go to Dollywood. I'm going to take her. So we need an audiobook because we can't read while we drive, so we need something to listen to. Since we're leaving tomorrow, it needs to be available now. I can't join a waiting list. Let's see, my mom likes mystery historical fiction. So we want to match that, and she reads a lot of them, so I need it to be a recent release first. So I've got all those conditions. Let's start meeting them. At the top of the library card, I can jump in right away and make sure I'm only seeing titles I can borrow right now by going with the Available Now filter. This is going to show me all of the titles in my library's collection that are available to borrow right now. So that's already limited me down nicely. And if you'll see, our preference is active here. It says available titles in English in what's available. Now I want an audiobook. So I can see here we're listing ebooks, audiobooks, and magazines. Well, I only want those audiobooks, so I am going to just tap on audiobooks. And we have gone from 70,000 titles to 21,000. Now that's still way too many to look through to find a book we want to read. So I am going to start limiting this down. Going to tap on Refine here. And your first question may be, why do you have two menus that look exactly the same? Refine looks very similar to preferences, and you can actually control a lot of the same things in here, but those preferences are things that are functioning across the app and are permanent unless you change it, whereas Refine is temporary and just for the search you're doing right in this second. So just keep that in mind. These Refine things are going to go away the moment we leave this search. So I want to add a subject. Like I said, my mother wants a mystery historical fiction because not only does it have to be a mystery, they also have to be in giant dresses with corsets. So we were at 21,000 titles, but just by adding mystery, we're at 2,800. We're already speeding through and dropping this number. But like I said, we need those frills and dresses, so we're going to add a second subject. Now, I point this out because I am not searching all mystery and all historical fiction. I now can see niche subjects. Right now, I've gone from 2,800 titles to 200. I'm only seeing books that are mystery historical fiction. So you can do this with Libby too. If you want to find a thriller that's also a humor book, does that exist? You can find out. You can put all of those combos together to find those niche titles you want to read. I recommend 2 to 3 subjects in a listing before Libby goes like, you're not going to get any results with these. And you'll just see that number drop from, 70,000 to 2,000 to 200 to 2. I've gotten up to 5, but usually 2 or 3 is that sweet spot. Okay, we have one criteria left to meet. Can you believe it? We did all of this. I'm going to go back into Refine. The last thing we want is to see the newest titles first. So right now, under Sort By, we see popularity. I don't want popular, I want release date. So that's going to show the newest releases up at the top. And that is filtering and refining lists, how we went from 70,000 titles to 205 with my specific genre needs in mind. For tip number 3, I'm actually going to stay right here on this page, but I'm going to take a quick drink of coffee. And we'll dive right in. So let's talk about tags for a second. What are they? They are a wonderful way to keep yourself organized. And it's also one of the main differences between the Libby app and the OverDrive app. So in the OverDrive app, our flagship original app, you only had a wish list and a history. So anything you wanted to read and everything you've ever read. Whereas now in Libby, you have tags. It's a great way to kind of create these custom lists. So on my personal device, what I tend to do is I have a lot of readers in my life, so I make them each their own tag. So when holidays and birthdays come around, I can hop into my mom's tag and I can find those mystery historical fiction titles that she likes to read, and I can just put those in my pickup cart for my local bookstore and walk in and be like, all right, Mom, we got 5 new books for you for Christmas. And it's all because I've just been kind of popping them in that list as I do my normal browsing. Yeah, it's a great way to save yourself some trouble later. The other thing I like to do with lists, similar, still making names for people, but I have 2 young nephews who are early readers. Whenever great books come through, make them their list, and I can send that list off to my brother later and say, hey, they might want to read these. So that's kind of like what tags are and some of the ways I use them. But another way I like to use them, we're actually seeing it right here in real time. So tags appear in your search results. Part of the reason I love that so much, because hey, we're in this search for my mom, I can come down here and see The War Widow is on my to be read list. This is my tag. It's a book I already want to read. So I'm just going to borrow that. I only have 205 books to look through, but now I've made it so easy on myself. I don't even have to think. I've already said this is a good one. I could just borrow it. Now let's talk about how we make them. So you see borrow, play sample, tag. If I tap on tag, I can create a new tag, and you can add a description if you don't know what it is, if you're just kind of making like a fun or a cute name. I tend to, when I'm doing like specific genre searches like this, just make that as a tag. Mystery, maybe it's mystery historical, however you like to do that, and then tap done or go, and that tag will be created and it will pop up right next to it. Now, you also saw that there's this great list right here that you can pick from your already existing tags. So there's my to be read list. Here's my cookbook list. This is my demo device, so all of my usual shopping lists are not on here. But hop back into a recipe I liked before. These up top are regular tags, so they don't have special abilities. They're just those lists that you've made to keep yourself organized as you go through life. Books you want to read later or buy for friends or recommend. And then underneath we have smart tags. There are 2 here that I want to talk about. The first one, everyone's going to have this. It's a great default in Libby. It is the borrowed smart tag. It looks like a little receipt. I like to think of it as when you walk up to the circulation desks at the library, you borrow your book, they're handing you a receipt. Here you go, return this on time. What this one does is anytime you borrow a book, it will automatically add this tag to the book, so that way hey, I read this before, or I at least checked it out before. So in this example we were just in, if The War Widow wasn't there and I wasn't borrowing this right away for my road trip, I could come down and I see The Devil in the Dark Water has my borrowed receipt next to it. So I now won't borrow this one and get 20 minutes into it before going, I read this already. Just about as bad as missing a hold is reading a book that you've already read and you keep borrowing 20 times deep. So this one can save you a lot of grief. That one will apply automatically. And then the last one is the magazine's smart tag. So the first time you borrow a magazine, Libby's going to prompt you to set this up. This is actually called a notify me tag. I named mine magazines because it just alerts you, but you can name it whatever you want, whether it's fun, cute emojis, or you just name it notify me or magazines. Basically, anytime after you've created this, you borrow a magazine, Libby's going to ask you if you want to add it to this smart tag. So anytime your library adds a new issue, like we were reading HGTV earlier, I have that in my magazines tag. So when a new copy or a new issue is added into the library, Libby's going to alert me and say, hey, this is ready for you. You want to read the new issue? And you can go in and borrow that right away. So you don't have to search for them or keep an eye out and be like, oh, is the new one in yet? You'll just get notified from Libby. So those are your smart tags, making life easier. And then you've got your regular tags, keeping you organized. So I've told you how I use them. We've seen them in a search result. I also want to show you where they live. So they'll pop up in any search, in any list, anywhere that you can see borrow play sample tag, it's going to appear. But they also will all live on your shelf. So I mentioned before, we've got our loans and our holds up at the top, but we also have our tags. It's going to show your first two, like most recently used. And then if you tap on more, it's going to pull up that full list. So we were just looking at this. I'm going to open up my to be read tag here. A few things I want to talk about. Tags are my favorite thing. This is my favorite tip to cover, so you get a lot of info out of this one. So there's a couple things we can do in here. So the first thing I want to point out, this is our super secret tip within a tip. I know I pointed out this icon in our getting started session, this library card with the plus sign. If you tap on that, this appears all throughout the app. Everywhere in the app, you're going to see that library card symbol. What's super cool about this and what makes it great, especially for y'all in Massachusetts with a total of 8 libraries to look through, is this is the way that you can kind of search all of those libraries at once. So down here, I can see how many copies are available and at which library. So if you've got all 8 library cards signed in Massachusetts and you're looking for the War Widow and there's a hold on all of it, except for you hit CW Mars, they've got one available. You can tap that little library card and borrow it right away. So you can either pick a shorter wait list, you can pick one that's available right now. It's a great way to search all of your libraries at once. All right, let's wrap up tags. I'm sneaking in tips here. One thing I want to show off is this actions button. So in here, if you were making your tag quickly, maybe you were on a walk and you're like, oh, I want to read this one later, and you misspelled mystery, you could rename it. Or if you don't want to tag anymore, whether you're not comfortable with your books automatically being tagged as borrowed, or if you decide you don't want something anymore, you can tap delete tag. It'll get rid of the tag you're currently in. My favorite button in here, however, is export tag. I usually pick table, but I've seen all of these used. You'll find what works for you. This is just my favorite formatting option. And so if you remember, I said earlier, I make lists for my nephews, and then I share those with my brother. So this is a list, I might want to share. I can come up to the top in this share button, and I could send this out as a text message, as an email, or if you want, you can even come down and print it out. So if you're making lists for people and they're going to love these books, you can then directly share it with them and they'll be able to find it in their library. And that is all about tags. I have one tip left before we go into our Q&A session here, and this is making notes and highlights. We're going to talk about some great features within an ebook and how we can kind of do different, notating and annotations and whatnot. You might want to use this if you're in a book club, if you are a student, or if you have a student, or if you're like Lisa and I, and you're just, monsters like us and want to make notes in your library books. This is the perfect way to do it because it doesn't damage anything. You're the only one who can see these, and when it goes back to the library, the next person who borrows it isn't going to see those at all because they're just yours and they're attached to your library card. So I'm going to open up Pride and Prejudice, a title I have made far too many notes in my lifetime because I took a class all about Jane Austen when I was in college. So I've annotated all of these books too many times. So I am in the ebook. We've seen this view before. If you have a section that you want to make a note on for later, you're going to put your finger over where you want to start. And I'm going to move my cursor a little bit to the left just so you can see what happens. And when your finger hits the screen, hold down. Don't tap, otherwise you'll change the page. You can see right there, O has turned blue. And I'm just going to drag my finger for as little or as much as you want to highlight. When you lift up your finger, this will pop up from the top or bottom, and we can choose highlight. So there's 3 different colors if you want to keep yourself organized, or if you just tap on highlight, it'll default to the last color you chose. So I've highlighted that section. I'm now going to tap on that highlight to make a note. Since this is just an example, I'm going to say this is an example for the sake of time. But you can make as long or as short of notes as you like. I have written full paragraphs. Just like you can have as many tags as you like, you can have as many notes as you like, and they can be as long as you want. You're not going to be cut off. So once your note and highlight are all done, we'll tap on save. And then if we keep flipping through, you're going to see your other notes appear. And say you want to get back to that list. We'll tap in the center of the screen. And in the upper right-hand corner, we have this multiple bookmark bar. And if we open that up, we can see all of the notes and highlights we've made throughout the text, broken down by chapter, showing off the color it is. So if you're using that to keep yourself organized. And if you find one you want to return to, just tap on it and it will flip back to that page for you. Highlight is there. If we tap on the highlight, that note is going to drop back down. Now I know, especially if you're using this for book club, sometimes you'll get that book, you'll read it, you'll make all your notes in it, and it goes back to the library 2 days before book club. And then someone borrows it, so there's a hold on it. Are your notes lost to you? No, not anymore. Let's show you how you can access notes and highlights even if the book is no longer in your possession. So we're going to leave Pride and Prejudice. And I have a book in mind that I borrowed a little bit ago that I know I've made notes and highlights in. So what we need to do is get to the title details page. You saw that in the Getting Started session. That was the little, like the back of the book format where we were kind of reading the description. So we could use the magnifying glass and just search for the title we're looking for. Or my sneaky tip is I am going to tap on my borrowed smart tag. I'm just going to tap into books. And now I can see all the books I've borrowed. I am looking for the guest list. And we can see it right here. I can't borrow it right now because someone's got it checked out, so I couldn't open it up that way, but that doesn't matter. I'll just tap on the jacket cover. And now I'm on that title details page. So this should look familiar from earlier. And what we're looking for here is the reading journey. So there's a wonderful button, one of the most amazing buttons in Libby next to the borrow one. We have our reading journey. So this is your entire activity with a title. Now, much like in tags, we have this action button, and you're going to see some similar options in here. We could export our reading data. So you could text it to yourself or email it or print it if you want all of that out that way. Maybe good if you're going somewhere that you're going to share this where you don't know if you'll have Wi-Fi or cell service. But if you don't want to export it and you just want to pull that note and highlight up, we can scroll down to our timeline here. And I can see, oh, I made some highlights. If I tap on that highlight, it's going to pull up that full highlight and my complete note. So even if this was, 3 words highlighted and then several paragraphs of notes, it'll all be there. Or if it was a couple paragraphs of highlights and a little bit, it's all going to show up. And that is tip number 4, how you can make notes and highlights and even export them or view them later to really kind of change your overall experience. So hopefully that encourages you to make notes in ebooks and audiobooks. You can also make notes and highlights in there as well. Let's see, some caveats. I mentioned that no one else can see your notes and highlights. They are specific to you. But if you borrow that book again, they're still all going to be there. They are saved. So no worries. Now I'm going to switch us over to our Q&A. So if you have any questions at all, feel free to send those through, and we'll take the next 10 minutes to answer those, even demo some of them live on screen. And I see you've got one saved for us, Lisa.
I did save this one. I was going to just type the answer, but I thought, this would be a great one for the whole
Absolutely.
audience to
Absolutely.
see. It's a very common question. Did Libby replace OverDrive?
So, wonderful question. Did Libby replace OverDrive? We're from OverDrive. We made Libby. We love Libby. And Libby is the way that we are directing everyone because it's so much easier to get started with Libby. So if you're a brand new user, we want you on Libby instead of OverDrive. Easier experience. Libby is the direction we're going forward. So Libby is our goal to only have one app to reduce confusion. But at this time, both apps are still available. You can keep using both. They kind of communicate with each other a little bit. But I would encourage you to try the Libby app, become familiar, and find your kind of love for Libby there. So for now, they both exist. But Libby is the direction we are going forward in the future. And at some point this year, you'll no longer be able to download the OverDrive app from the App Store, but it will still function. So
it's interesting, even going back now and because for the longest time, I was like, no, I am going to be an OverDrive app. I am not Libby, but now, oh my gosh, the difference. If I try to go back now and use the OverDrive app, I have to reteach myself how to do it because it's just,
absolutely.
Libby is so much easier to use. Oh.
When I started working at OverDrive, I had been using the OverDrive app for 10 plus years and Libby had just come out and I thought, whatever. Yep. And within like a couple weeks, I realized I was like, well, I'll just use both to learn Libby. And I don't think I ever looked back. So great question. Thank you. I know once you switch, there's no going back there. Let's see. We had someone ask earlier about Acorn TV Access through Libby. I wanted to mention that because I signed in with our demo card. It does not look like that is fully in your system yet. So it's not something that's popped up in Libby. But I can kind of explain what that will look like if that service pops up in your app. You're going to have this little extras button. When it becomes available, you'll see it there. Now remember, we're in my demo library, so you are seeing everything that we offer or a lot of what we offer, not necessarily what yours is going to look like. I actually don't think Acorn TV is one of the ones that goes into Libby, but
I don't think Acorn TV is available yet. Okay. I think we're still working on some stuff in the background.
So that will be coming, but it's not something I can show off right now. But when stuff like Acorn TV or any of these services that your library offers become available, under that extras menu, if you find one you're looking for, you're basically checking out that pass like you would an ebook or an audiobook, and then it's going to walk you through the steps on the screen. Libby is going to take you to, like in this case, Universal Class's website. So we don't talk too much about it because it's more like you're just borrowing access in Libby, and then the rest of the usage is going to happen either in their app or in their website. So keep an eye out on that. Your library is always adding new materials, whether it's ebooks, audiobooks, or magazines, and also sometimes those extras. If you don't see it there, there isn't anything to borrow. Let's see. My Kindle only has OverDrive. Will Libby be available for my Amazon Fire? Soon. I cannot say soon. Unfortunately, this is something we're always working to try to get Libby into the Kindle Fire App Store, but she has yet to be approved. So for now, please continue to use OverDrive if you want to borrow in all formats, ebook, audiobook, and magazine. If you're only interested in reading ebooks, you could use Libby on another device and use that read with Kindle option. But But believe me, when Libby is available for Kindle Fire, you will definitely find out about it. Any chance the icons for browsing library card can be switched to the bookshelf account info? Our patrons find them counterintuitive. Wonderful feedback. We do appreciate that. And I actually want to use this as a wonderful moment. We're going to go into the Libby menu. Anytime you have an idea in Libby, if it's something you don't like, or if it's something you think needs to exist, you can submit it directly to our developers. And I love to flood their inbox with feedback. So in the Libby menu, go to Get Some Help. And then there is the suggestion box. Here's an idea for the future. You can come in here, type as much as you want, let them know that you think the symbols are counterintuitive, or if it's a new feature you'd like to see added, absolutely pop that in there and submit it. And the more people who are submitting that, the more we're going to see those changes happen or features added to the roadmap. Additionally, there are some updates coming, like we heard that feedback actually already, so there are some updates coming to the library card and shelf icons, but until those are finalized, I can't talk too much about them. Just know there's hopefully some helpful changes coming, but keep that suggestion box in mind. And then Tegan, as a staff question, how can we, as the library, get the extras tag set up? I will follow up with you with your account manager info. They are going to be the one to help you with that, unless you already know them and are familiar with them, an email to them or your product support specialist. But I'll follow up with their contact info for you, Tegan, when I send you some stats from today. So we'll get that all set for you.
Thanks, Joe. I was actually just about to pull up that
Oh,
info.
no. Thank you. I
That's
appreciate
perfect
that. No
answer.
worries. Great questions, everyone. We have about 4 minutes left, but please keep typing your questions. We won't end the webinar until all those are answered. So if you've got more burning questions for us, if there are things you'd like to see on screen, I'm more than happy to do that. So send those through. While we wait, I know I showed off the suggestion box. That's one of my things I love to point out. But once again, as a reminder, I know I covered it in getting started, but remember, you always have access to our tech support team in the Libby menu under Get Some Help. And then up at the top, you can start by saying, hey, maybe I want to learn a little bit more about tags. And you type in tags and you find that, what are they? You could reach out to them if you're just saying, I want a little bit more info on this, all the way up to I'm having a problem with the app. Maybe it's a bug. You could just tap on Ask Our Support Team, and they'll first try to see if it's a problem, a question, or an idea, and then you'll go from there. So 24/7, 365 days of the year, and they do all of their correspondence via email, and they will get back to you usually at most 24 hours later. Well, wonderful. It doesn't look like we have any other questions coming through. So wanted to take a final moment to thank everyone for joining us today and for taking the time out of their morning to learn all about the Libby app. We really appreciate it. Just as some final thoughts, remember we have been recording today, and you will receive that email tomorrow from Zoom. That includes a link to the recording. You can watch it as much as you like, share it with family and friends. If you're any of our library staff members joining us today, you can download it and host it on your website or your YouTube channel if you want to direct patrons to it. The link of the video itself expires after 30 days. So just keep in mind you have a month to view it, but there is the option to download it if you want to keep it forever, as my computer screams at me. When we end the webinar in just a minute here, a survey is going to pop up in your browser. If you could fill that out for us, let us know what you liked, what we could do differently. I know Lisa and I would both greatly appreciate it. I think that's it, Lisa. Any other final thoughts?
I just wanted to thank everyone for joining it. I had so much fun. I only sometimes get to join Joe for doing these, and I just love it. I had so much fun today. It was a great audience. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for joining us, Lisa. Thank you, everyone, once again so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day and happy reading.
Bye, everyone.